Could Odysseus run a hedge fund in 2026? Listen, I just came back from watching the Odyssey. While I think it was a top 5 movie of 2026, couldn't help but think about, man, Odysseus was a great leader. So could he theoretically run a hedge fund in 2026? If he was here today with the things that we know about him now, how would his performance be? Because here's the thing about hedge funds. Most hedge funds don't even outperform the broad market. So the S&P 500, the thing that everybody knows about, the index fund of the top 500 companies in the United States, the S&P 500 beats a lot of hedge funds in performance. So not only could Odysseus run a hedge fund, but could he run it to outperform the S&P 500? To fully understand, we have to look at everything, so let's look at it. First of all, could Odysseus even trade well? Because there's a mechanical skill that comes to trading. Could he be able to function with all the technology? It'd be hard to think that he would be, because he's a warrior. He's not like a numbers guy. He's a leader into battle. He's ready to go put on a helmet and outsmart people on the battlefield, right? And he's from an ancient world. There's no data, there's no computers, there's no models. So looking at a computer would be like you going into a cockpit and saying, hey pilot, go ahead, take a lunch, I got it from here. And even him being lost at sea for the last 10 years, I mean, that sounds like a guy who can't even execute a plan, which is one of the main jobs of a hedge fund. But even with all that, you can still look at Odysseus and see where he could actually succeed at being able to trade. He's waited years without panicking at all. He had patience when he was in the middle of the ocean, waves crashing down around him, fighting sea monsters. He had an understanding of what to do next. Also, he gathered intel before every big move. The way that we can see that Odysseus can get advice and actually learn and take that advice seriously is when he comes across the cattle of Helios. And that's important because he was told that cattle of Helios were sacred and they should be kept on the island and not to be killed. So he told his men not to kill these animals, because if you kill them, you will surely die. And those men listened to him at first, but in the end they didn't listen to him, and they ended up eating the cattle, and exactly what he said ended up happening. But Odysseus was one of the only ones who didn't eat a single piece of the cattle, and he ended up living in the end. So that's a great way of showing that he does know how to execute a plan, and he knows how to learn from the advice that he's given, which gives me the confidence, because even though he's a warrior and he's from an ancient world and knows nothing about computers, he would be able to gather the intel of how to make this stuff work and actually become better at learning the market. So I think when it comes to Odysseus's potential at being a good hedge fund manager, I don't think that information will be a problem for him. I think he'll learn how to trade, and then he'll become better at trading. And he has the intangibles. He has the internal skill of having good discernment and understanding how to take advice well. So he'll learn, and then he'll improve quickly. But even if he knows how to trade, the real question is, could he manage a team and fund operations? Which you would think, well, obviously he can manage a team because he managed a whole army going into the Battle of Troy. But here's the thing, every hedge fund lives or dies on its team, and the founders who can't retain talent tank fast. Not only could your talent leave your fund for a different opportunity that they have in their own life, or they become successful and just decide to leave, your talent could straight up get poached, where another hedge fund is seeing the guys that you got and they said, okay, well, he seems to be doing a pretty good job, I'll pay him more to do the same thing over here. And then you just got one of your best guys poached. And obviously we can know in the history of that story, when it comes to Odysseus, he's known for, having a good team, but not being able to retain those guys, with a lot of them falling in the battles of war. You can give Odysseus a break and say, well, he was going up against some of the greatest monsters, but it doesn't give me a great backstory or great backlog of proof that you can run a team and help retain them. The reality of Odysseus' story is that he lost almost his entire crew by the end of it. So I can't really trust you to retain the talent of your hedge fund, because you might put them in danger, or you might not be able to lead them the correct way. And it's hard for me to just trust your direction. A lot of times the thing that hurt Odysseus is that he had a big idea, but he had to sacrifice others to get that job done. We see this between the interaction between Odysseus and Sinon. because even though the army was in the Trojan horse, he didn't tell Sinon that they were in the Trojan horse, and he genuinely thought it was a gift. And he says, Odysseus, why didn't you tell me that you guys were in the horse? And Odysseus tells him, I couldn't tell you because I needed you to believe it. Like, I needed you to believe that we weren't in there. That was the only way that this was going to work. So what that shows is Odysseus has a track record of sacrificing people for his own gain. And that could honestly, if we're being honest, be a good thing or a bad thing for hedge funds. Like, being able to sacrifice the little guy in order to gain a big advantage might actually be a great thing for a hedge fund. Like, once you think about it, yes, he sacrificed Sinon, but like, that got them into the Battle of Troy. Like, that helped them take over and created the Trojan horse story. Like, even though it was a small sacrifice, it was honestly the exact thing that they needed to do. So my final verdict on could he manage a team for this operation is that Odysseus has shown time and time again that he is a confident leader, and whenever they are in trouble, they look to one person. They look to him, and they look for his answers, and whatever he says pretty much goes. And you have to appreciate that. That shows an immense amount of trust that they have in you to do the right thing or make the right call. So for that, I have to say that he would be able to manage the team. The only problem I would find in his journey is, would he be able to manage and retain the talent? Because poachers will happen and other opportunities will arise, and he might just sacrifice people for the greater good of his own fund. So I would wonder how those relationships go, and I feel like if anything was going to take down this hedge fund, it wouldn't be his lack of ability to trade, it'd be his lack of ability to retain talent. Now we're on to the final question that will determine everything if we're going to give him a passing grade that he himself will be a great hedge fund manager. By the way, if you've made it this far in the video, then that means statistics show that there's a high probability you'll like another one of my future videos too. So subscribe now so you don't miss whenever that video drops. The final one we have to go through is emotion. Could Odysseus sit there and allow his emotions to take the back seat? Because Odysseus has had a troubled past struggling with irregular emotions and not being able to handle them properly, and that could be a great inhibitor on why he's not successful being a hedge fund manager. The reason I say why Odysseus has a problem regulating his emotions, I can draw closely to the time where they were in the cave and they had the Cyclops in the cave with them. Now, at a point in time where they finally escape and they're able to just run away, run to the beach, go back to their ship and leave, Odysseus decides to turn around, grab his bow and arrow and shoot the Cyclops in the eye right before he leaves, and he tells the Cyclops, tell your father that Odysseus was here. And that led to the Cyclops telling his dad, which I think was like Poseidon or something like that, and that cursed them on the sea, on the ocean for the rest of their time. It completely ruined everything. It probably killed multiple of his men, all for the opportunity for him to flex his ego and show him, this is who I am. It didn't even stop there. I mean, this Cyclops ended up chasing them all the way to their ship. He could have killed his men right then and there. For what? For the opportunity to flex on a guy that they just escaped from, to flex and say, I'm so great? You almost killed your friends. And this goes back to his ability to manage a team. Will you be able to manage your ego and emotions to stop yourself from doubling down on a position that's not going well? You know, who's going to say that his ego isn't going to get in the way, or even though something looks like it's going to go down, he still thinks it's going to go up? So Odysseus has a huge ego problem, and it's something that's explored throughout the entirety of this story, and I think that's one of the factors that will affect his ability to be a great hedge fund manager. So I think throughout all of this, we've reviewed the 3 questions, and I've seen that Odysseus has clear strengths that would make him a great trader. He's patient enough to sit through a decade-long drawdown without folding. He'll be able to sit there and wait through it if he believes that he can make it out the other end. He also is amazing at gathering intel before he makes a move, and then doing the necessary things required of him to be successful, which means that he gathers the advice and then listens to it and does it. He's consistently faced with impossible choices, but through that he always chooses the calculated loss over the catastrophic unknown, which is the entire game of hedging in the market. The clearest example of his ability to choose the calculated loss is when they're sailing through a narrow strait where they could either go one side and where there's a six-headed monster, or they could go down this massive whirlpool on the other side. Now the whirlpool would kill them all. Meanwhile, the six-headed monster would only grab a few of them as they passed. He knew that he couldn't avoid both of them, so he chose the six-headed monster because he knew that wouldn't kill all of them. That's the calculated loss over the catastrophic unknown. He took the guaranteed smaller hit instead of gambling everything on a chance of losing it all. And that was a lot of the information that made me believe that Odysseus would actually be a great hedge fund manager. But that was until this video, because now I believe it tells a whole different story, because none of his strengths will save him from being a hedge fund manager that can outperform the S&P 500. Because remember, I told you, hedge funds barely outperform the S&P, and a lot of them don't even have a lot of the negatives that Odysseus would bring to the table. For example, he can't retain his team. Losing almost his entire crew throughout his journey through his own bad decisions is something I can't ignore, and something I would see being the nail in the coffin for his own hedge fund. He also can't resist showing off, which displays his ego and his inability to control his ego. And you can see this when he yells at the Cyclops right after escaping, which curses his whole team and almost kills his team before they can get to the ships. I think these are the type of character traits that we've seen in people like Jordan Belfort, who ran his fund and was so confident, was so cocky, had such a big ego, ended up in jail because of it. And Odysseus, I could see him doing close to the same thing if he was put in the same situation. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? Would Odysseus make a good hedge fund manager? My final verdict on all of it is no. He would not manage my funds if it was my decision.